All right. All right. Hopefully I am coming through. Chad Green, nice to have you on, sir. Irish, appreciate you joining. Ken, I think we chatted on Facebook a little bit earlier. Glad to have you in. This should be good. So I'm looking forward to the topic today. Let me go ahead. I got to take care of some housekeeping things. I just got off of another meeting that was running over. I was like, I had to just run out of there so I can get to this. Like, we got things to do. So let's see, to the group, and we're going to code and all right. Okay. Yep, I just got your message, Ken. So cool. We should be live now on Facebook. Welcome to this Tuesday edition of our monthly meetup, where today we're going to be talking about a very, very important topic, which is relationships with brokers. They are the lifeline of your business. If you are going to buy apartments, you are definitely going to be working with brokers. We'll talk about on-market deals, off-market deals, how to form relationships with brokers, how to have discussions, things that you should ask, all those things. And I encourage you to ask your questions. This meetup is not for me. You know what I mean? It's nothing that I'm not really doing this for the purpose of me necessarily learning. I'm doing it for sharing information, sharing ideas with you, those who take time out to show up today. So with that being said, if you have questions about anything that I'm discussing today, if you have your questions, your unique situation as you are talking with your brokers, then feel free to either drop a message if you are over on the Facebook chat, and I will cover that. If not, and you are on the Zoom and you just want to unmute yourself and ask your question, let's do that. So I'm going to go through a few points relatively quickly, right, and breeze through them, and then we'll have just open discussion, dialogue about broker relationships and how to make that happen at the end. So if you are new to this, let me let you know that my name is Jason Stubblefield. I have been investing in apartments since 2016. I'm going to share, let's see, if you are online, let me get a head nod if you can see the screen I'm sharing right now. Okay, I see head nods. All right, so SNS, that's like Sam, Nancy, Sam Capital Partners. That is my website. You can see some of the deals that we bought, testimonials from investors who have invested with us. And if you want to hear about future deals, if you are wanting to invest passively, then you can go over here to this invest tab. You fill out a brief form from the join now. That will put you on our investor list. We'll have a conversation to see what type of deals that you are looking for. If what we have meets that criteria, then we'll share opportunities with you. But the only way to find out about some of our opportunities is to register through this form. So I encourage you to do that, because we got some pretty exciting deals coming out in the very near future. But as mentioned, I started investing in 2016, grew the portfolio to a little over 1,000 units. I started selling off some stuff in 2021 and also this year. And so this meeting right here is something that I've started for a while, but we just talk everything real estate. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and dive right in to see what we got for today. So broker relationships, I guess we'll just start off with the beginning, and that is, where do you find brokers at, right? In this business, most brokers that I know aren't advocating for buyers, right? They aren't necessarily like residential brokers where you see them with billboards and they got their name on the side of buses and they're doing a whole lot of marketing to put it out. And that is because most of the people that are buying deals, it's not for the general public. Commercial real estate is not for the general public. Most people aren't cutting $5 million equity checks to go buy a $15 million piece of real estate. So because of that, making that connection with the brokers who sell those deals is paramount. Being on their investor list is something that is going to take a little bit of effort, and we'll talk about how to do that. So the first thing is like, where do you find brokers at? And last week I did a training all about how to find deals, and those deals were coming from brokers. But I use loopnet.com and Crexi.com as a great database for finding brokers, right? And when I say that, maybe it's not necessarily you'll find your deal from there, but you very well could find the broker who will sell you the deal on LoopNet or Crexi.com. So because I covered this last week, I'll just do a quick screen share and we'll talk about it. So come in here, if you can see my screen, right? And a lot of people that they come in here, they search for what they're looking for, and they search for apartments if they're doing that, right? But what I like to do is come over here to this little hamburger, and you'll see down here you have a find a broker, right? And so when you find a broker, now you can put in the same criteria, right? You go to multifamily, you put in the location. I'm in Georgia. I could also do Atlanta. And if you were to do that, now you get a list of brokers. Last week we talked about how to reach out to them, what you should say, that sort of thing. I won't cover that. I won't cover that right now. But what we'll say is, when you do see brokers on here, what should you say, right? How do you start to engage with them to have a conversation? And so to me, it all starts and ends with the deal. You have a mutual alignment into deals. You as a buyer, you want to be able to do a deal, and then the broker also wants to be able to sell a deal, and they need qualified buyers, and I'll reiterate that, qualified buyers, in order to be able to buy those deals. So I had a broker who tell me this, and we actually have a broker on the call today. So Ken, you're here. Feel free to unmute yourself. I want you to back me up. Really want to get your opinion from being a broker, right? How you view this. So definitely feel free to hop in here at any time, or even correct me if I've said something wrong, right? But to just keep things moving, your first sale is actually to the broker, right? I said qualified buyers is what brokers are seeking. So you need to be a qualified buyer. I had a broker who told me this. Usually they don't get more than 2 chances. And Ken, I want you to do a brief introduction, but I'll tee this up, and then maybe you can give us an introduction and let me know your thoughts about this. But most brokers, if they are listing a property and a buyer fails to purchase that deal, maybe, just maybe, the seller will list with that broker again and give them another opportunity, right? But if another seller that broker brings to them doesn't perform, doesn't buy the deal, they're going to take that deal oftentimes to another brokerage, and that broker has lost that deal. So if you understand from a broker's perspective how strict it is and how they're really paid off of performance, they don't want to bring unqualified buyers to deals, because that's how they could lose off commission. So it's in the best interest of the seller and the best interest of the broker to only deal with those buyers that are qualified. So Ken, what are your thoughts about that? Give us a brief intro to you.
Ken Rosengren. I'm a real estate broker of over 15 years, and I'm also an investor as well. That's 100% accurate. With commercial especially, we only want to deal with somebody who is highly qualified. We don't want to have, now if there's an issue with the property, that's one thing, and we can't come to terms, but when the property is in great shape and everything's good to go and the numbers are right, there's no reason why a buyer shouldn't perform. However, if they can't perform because they're not qualified, it does hurt that relationship between that broker and that seller. At the same time, some sellers do understand that that's going to happen once in a while. There's only so much that we can do. I will say that the impression you're giving me is that a buyer should be working with the listing commercial agent. Is that correct?
No,
Is that what
not
you're
at all.
saying? Okay, good. Because you were making me really nervous there. As a buyer, you want to be represented by another real estate agent 100%. In my opinion, because the listing broker is not going to watch out for the buyer.
Wait, Ken. No, I thought, so you're saying that a buyer should have a buyer agent.
Even in commercial, they should. Yes. Because that listing agent has no contractual agreement with that buyer, and they can't represent both legally. You become what's called a dual agent, even in commercial. So it's just my opinion. It's how I feel about it. But I know a lot of people will go directly to the seller, to the listing agent, and work with them on commercial property.
Yeah. And that's the way I do it. It's the way that I show other people to do it. Reason being, right, is because usually there's a commission split. And if you are working with a selling broker and they are they're expecting to get the commission. So maybe they worked out some sort of commission, but once you introduce another broker, now they have to split that commission. All things being equal, people are people at the end of the day. So why would I sell it to somebody who's coming to me with another broker to take part of my commission if I have somebody else who is equally qualified, who's just going to work with me? I don't know what state you're in, Ken, but I haven't seen any brokers even bring that up in the commercial space. And residential is a little bit different. I know you got to have a lot of disclosures, but for what we've been buying, it's really been all about just working with that listing broker. And what Ken did say that I agree with is that listing broker is representing the seller completely, right? So you as a buyer, you have to beware. You have to protect your own interests, and you do that with your own lawyers. You do that with following a due diligence process. But that listing broker is representing the seller, and that's really how they work. So Ken, I want to ask you: do you work with a lot of buyers, or are you primarily working with sellers of properties?
Both. We do a little bit of both. I typically will not represent a buyer. The buyer has, if they don't want to come in with an agent, they represent themselves. I will not represent them at all. Now I do with my commercial clients, we do represent them. We have an agreement. We do submit our fee structure to the seller prior to. Most of the time, my commercial clients actually pay me. The seller does not. So it just depends.
Okay. That's interesting. So let me ask this question. I think this would be helpful to everybody on the call. So if a buyer who is relatively inexperienced, right, comes to you and says, I want you to show me deals, I want to get on your list, what sort of things are you looking for from that buyer, whether you would say, hey, this is a person I want to work with, or whether it's someone who I do not?
We'll more than likely spend a couple hours at lunch having a very detailed conversation around assets, around experience, around how much money do they have? They're pulling a loan? Who are they pulling a loan with? I want to know who the loan officer is. I want to make sure that they know what they're doing. If they're paying cash, I want to see proof of funds. And we're going to have a very detailed conversation over a couple of hours to find out if they really are qualified. And there's times that I get up from that conversation, shake their hand and say, maybe we're not going to be the right fit. I can recommend maybe somebody else. But a lot of times they're good to go after that conversation. There's still some more follow-up to find out about the finances, if they're financing, and a couple other factors. But then we get into the conversation of, during that conversation, we're talking about, how much do they want to make? What cap rates are they interested in? What return on their money do they want? What's their long-term plan? What's their short-term plan? Do they have an idea of plan B? A lot of people want to buy a property with plan A, and sometimes that doesn't happen. So they got to switch to plan B, or they want to buy and hold. And then all of a sudden the market changes. Mary, I'm in Washington State and Oregon. Our company does commercial across the country. So it's it's just a little bit different. But I had it's a long conversation over lunch.
Gotcha. Okay. So yes, you did speak on something that I wanted to talk about, right? And that is as a buyer, when you are having conversations with a broker, you need to have some form of like sophistication as you're talking with a broker, right? It's not time for you to show up and not know what a cap rate is. It's not time for you to show up and not know what equity multiples, cash on cash returns, or any other sort of lingo that is spoken about in commercial real estate. Because as Ken mentioned, when they're talking to you, they're asking you these questions to see what it is that you are looking for. And they're also having an evaluation there, right? So last week I gave the analogy. If somebody says, hey, let's go play basketball, and you say, all right, let's go play basketball. And then we get ready to go play basketball and you say foul, and they say, what's a foul? Or you say, no, you traveled, and they say, what's traveling? Like, well, honestly, you don't know anything about basketball because you don't even understand what traveling is. And in commercial real estate, when you don't understand cap rates, or when you don't understand pro formas, when you don't understand brokers speak, you appear like you are a complete rookie, and you are, but you need to do your own homework first. So last week I talked about how to find brokers and start a campaign to reach out to them. But at the end, I gave a very stark warning about not starting that before you've done your homework, right? Don't go out and get a bunch of brokers calling and emailing you, and you don't know the basics of multifamily and how to even carry on a conversation. So also, to those on the Facebook group, I'm gonna throw out a list of terms. So stay tuned this week. If you're interested in having a list of common terms of commercial real estate, I'll put that out for you. So knowing that is paramount when it comes to developing relationships. Another thing that I like to do when it comes to meeting brokers is going on property tours. And so with that, what I'll do, especially if it's in a market that I am new to, right? It's worth it for you to invest in time to go to a market and just have that coffee, have that lunch with somebody like Ken, as he mentioned, right? They want to sit down with you and sort of see what you're all about. And if you're serious, a lot of people may be investing in areas that they don't live at. And if that's you, then it's worth it for you to buy a plane ticket to go to that market, to tour some properties. Or if the broker that you really want to meet doesn't have any listings right now, at least just sit down for coffee or lunch to get some face-to-face time. It's a relationship business at the end of the day. So strongly encourage you to do that. Next thing we do is we look at the offering memorandums. And so that offering memorandum is going to have some specific things unique to that deal. You read over that offering memorandum and just be aware of it as you're having that conversation, so you can talk intelligently to the broker. And once you get into the point of underwriting, then you want to be able to share your underwriting with the broker. That's one of the things that we do. I think we had a question that came in from Bev. She's like, what about if with an attorney, they work with buyer and seller? So yes, what the way that I do it is that we go in really with no representation, buying a deal from a listing broker. And then once we have that deal under contract, then we will engage our attorney that will work with the seller's attorney. And that's how we protect our interests, right? Having our own attorney that will work on our side. You said they work with buyer and seller. I don't know much about that. I would not have an attorney who's representing me and the seller at the same time. I think that I don't even know if an attorney would do that, if that's what you meant by that question, Bill. But it's usually you have your people, your attorney representing you, and then the seller has their broker and their attorney representing them. So we were on to I was talking about underwriting, and underwriting oftentimes can be a great method of building rapport with the broker, because if they're looking at a deal or that they're selling a deal, and let's just say you've had your coffee with them, or you had phone conversation, you've shared who you are, what it is that you're looking for. Now they are giving you a deal. Being able to give them feedback on that deal, being able to talk about what you saw in the offer memorandum, and being able to talk about how you underwrote the deal oftentimes can help bridge the gap. Some people appear, and I've done this personally, where you think about the broker like, oh, that's the bad guy. That's the person who's trying to get all this extra money from me that we probably shouldn't pay, going to screw up my returns. And a lot of times, well, sometimes that's true, right? They do have an interest in working with the listing agent, but I don't really see brokers as the enemy, right? They're not somebody to be the bad guy over there that's keeping you from getting your deals. They're part of your team, right? So the broker has underwritten this deal. They probably have a list of underwriters, and they have come up with a sales price based off of that underwriting and what they expect the market to do. And I'm talking about good brokers. There may be some brokers that'll just try to win a listing and will throw out a price that they think they can get that's a little bit what would I say? It's far-fetched, right? The rent assumptions are probably a little bit too aggressive, but for the most part, brokers want to see deals close. And at the end of this, there's a neutral party called the bank that is going to underwrite these deals and provide a loan to them. And that's where you find the common ground of saying, all right, well, this property is going to sell, is going to get financed at this amount. And so if you approach it like that, then when you are working with a broker, right, I just want to understand their underwriting. I want to understand, how did they get there? If they're saying, if they're $50 higher in rents, right, what did they base it off? What are their rental comps? Do I trust those rental comps? If they did some tax assumptions, what are their tax assumptions? Can I make the same assumptions? So when I talk about sharing underwriting, it's really not in opposition to the broker, but more so working with the broker to say, what is it that I can learn from you? And a good broker will probably also learn from you, the buyer, how you think about this deal, right? So that's another way for you to be able to gain a relationship and talk about something that's tangible with the deal that you have in front of you. So Ken, you want to unmute? I see your question there, but looks like you have some comments you might want to share.
Well, there's a question about, is it advantageous to have a buyer's agent? I gave my opinion. The listing agent technically can't advise you on anything, and they're not supposed to. That's just basic contract law. They have an agreement with a seller that says they're going to represent the seller to the best of their ability. And if they start giving you, the buyer, information about how to proceed in the process, how to write the offer, they're going against their client. So the listing agent should be careful of that. And I know that gets violated a lot, both residential and commercial side. I see it all the time. But you're calling underwriting your due diligence of going through all the numbers and everything. That's the buyer's responsibility. Typically, underwriting in a bank is going to review some numbers, but they're not going to dig deep. You should have already done that as a buyer. You should dig into those numbers at a high level. The listing agent is going to give you what you ask for. And if you don't know what to ask for, you're only going to get what you ask for. You're not going to get everything that goes along if you're not being specific and asking for the right information. But that's the buyer's responsibility. I know underwriting will review some information, but it's the buyer who has to verify all the information and make sure that it is accurate based on market value and everything else. No,
I agree with that. It's definitely one of those scenarios where where you are on your own as a commercial real estate buyer, right? There's really not anyone representing you. You can have somebody like Ken represent you as you want to. Most of the people that I know are buying real estate in this industry are not, though. They aren't using a buyer agent. It's basically you being a commercial real estate buyer are expected to do your own due diligence, to run your own numbers, to account for your deal yourself, and to bring your capital or your investor pool or however you're buying this deal to that deal with a certain set of knowledge. Your protections are only going to come from the lawyer that you engage with to protect your interests, right? So that's the way we do it. If you did choose to have someone represent you, I mean, you could do that. There are people who will do that. It's just not something that I've seen practice. I know Jim said he's done it both ways, but I believe in the comments he said he recommended doing it without it, and that's the way we do it too. So when it comes to using the underwriting, right, that's another way that you can follow up with the broker. And another thing that we've done to some effect is to use whatever your marketing thought leadership platform, whatever that is, right? So I have this meetup that I do. I also do like a monthly newsletter. We will share that with brokers. And why am I doing that? Why would I put a broker on that list? Right? You just want to remind them, because a lot of times they have several buyers on their list, but just once a month, trickle campaign to your broker to say, hey, my name is X and I'm still actively looking for apartments, or making a phone call to the broker once a quarter just to say, hey, what do you have going on right now, or this deal. That's another way to stay top of mind in this industry. Your consistency is what's going to pay off. When you are getting started, it's not like you have a ton of credibility, a ton of brokers who are banging down your door to give you deals. They're very much working with clients who they already have established relationships with. And yeah, they need more buyers, but it's going to take some consistent, deliberate effort. They want to see you in the market. And so having that drip campaign, having that phone call follow-up is going to be another way that you can stay top of mind. And those emails, even if they don't get open, right? One of the things you talk about sales psychology, right? It's not necessarily doing it for the moment. Coca-Cola doesn't spend all that money on advertising those commercials so you can go buy a Coke right when you see the ad. They're just putting Coca-Cola's brand in your mind so that later on, when you go to the store, you're saying, okay, what I want to get someone, I want to get a Coke, right? You are doing the same thing marketing when you're sending out your newsletter, when you're talking about whatever your thought leadership platform, or just sharing useful information. Even if you do it with brokers, you're reminding them that, hey, I'm a multifamily buyer, I'm in the industry, reach out to me. And oftentimes you'll then see, you'll send out that campaign, and then the broker say, hey, take a look at this, right? This is a deal that we have coming up, or this is a deal that we have on the market right now, because they're seeing that communication from you. So with that being said, the last thing I wanted to talk about before we go completely into Q&A is just about off-market deals. So I know a lot of people are frustrated right now. They're like, these pricing is way too high. I can't make these numbers work. How do I get the off-market deal? And in my opinion, off-market deals are relatively non-existent, right? And why would you say that it happens? Well, if you think like a seller, right? So we sold some deals too. And as a seller, I'm like, why would I want to just sell a deal and not get the full market value for that? And so I've sold property off market, and I've sold it on market. And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. But when you're trying to get the best pricing, right? Oftentimes you're going to go out and put your deal on the market, and you are going to see what the market will demand. You'll interview the buyers and make sure that you select the person that you feel like will work for you. But just taking even a potential $100,000, even 1 million or a few $1 million haircut on a deal, just not a lot of buyers or a lot of sellers, I should say, that are willing to do that. Most of them are going to put it on the market in order to attract the highest price for it. So usually there will be some brokers who will say, here's an off-market deal. But when they say off-market, it's basically going to a close-knit pool of that investors or that broker's network, right? So I've closed 3 deals with this group, 2 deals with that group, and maybe they close the deal or so with you, and so they'll send it, but you're not the only buyer that they're going to bring it to. That's my opinion, right? Ken, want to hear your thoughts about that. What do you think about off-market deals?
Especially with commercial, it's very seldom do you really see off market. And if you do see off market properties, in my experience, you typically run into issues with the numbers. Let's be honest. I mean, there's issues with the numbers or the property, because either the numbers are inflated or the property's in really poor condition. There's a lot of reasons why, and they're trying to get it to somebody who doesn't really know that much. So just being blunt and being honest, but typically you're not going to see a lot of off-market properties. It'll be pocket deals within groups, but not one-off.
Yep. No. That's what I've seen. I know a lot of people who are thinking that the only way people are buying deals these days are just because they're getting them off market, and I don't find that to be the case at all. It's usually on market deals, or maybe they had the pocket listing or something like that. But usually these steps, if you follow the steps that we mentioned today, you can start to build relationship with those brokers, so that when they do decide to share a deal with a list of buyers, right, you can be on that list, right? So we had a Facebook question from Daisy. What's the very first step to get started? Would it be looking for a broker? Yes. So Daisy, I would recommend that you get today's replay. If you send a message in Facebook, we can send that to you. And also you probably want to see last week's replay. Those two will definitely show you how to get started with finding brokers. And then what we talked about at the beginning of the call today of how to engage in those conversations. So with that, that's really all I got. So those who are on the line, I want to hear your opinions. What have you seen? What questions do you have when it comes to establishing relationships and building credibility with brokers? So James says smaller properties under 100 units can have off-market deals, but it's because a relationship was built with the owner or a property management company. This I would agree with, right? So what he's saying is if you have a relationship with the owner, right, you may find an owner who just wants to sell something and they know you as a buyer, right? And so yes. Also, if you have a property management company, maybe they are managing an asset and they know that it needs some repair, or that owner is thinking about selling, and because they have a relationship with you, they'll bring you to that seller and make a deal, right? That can happen. I think that it's definitely doable, but I don't think that if you're trying to buy 2 or 3 deals a year or 4 deals a year, whatever it is, that you're going to find the majority of your deals in that way, right? So I'll say if you're in a neighborhood or already get to know other properties nearby, and the owners will see you have already performed and may entertain an offer. Okay, yep, 100%. So James, I love talking with James because he's always got creative ideas when it comes to this. But what he's saying is that if you own an apartment community already, and you know, say you have a 50 unit complex and there's somebody across the street that has a 80 unit, right? Going to them, knowing that they they own and that you own in relatively close proximity, that can help you find an off-market deal, because it's just like, hey, they know that you perform, they know that you like the market, the area. And so a lot of those things that could be question marks or uncertainties when it comes to selecting a buyer go away because you already own closely. Cool. So anybody else, feel free, if you're on the Zoom, to unmute yourself to hop in a discussion. Looking at Q&A, we've got Ken, who is a licensed broker out of Washington State. You've got experience on the line. So if you are trying to build a relationship and you have questions about how to do that with brokers, now is the time. I'll check the Facebook, check Facebook as well to see if we have anything coming from there. Let's see. All right. Well, I'm not going to belabor nothing. Everybody feels pretty good about what they have. We did get another comment from James. He says, I'm not trying to bash brokers. They can make you millions and are your best friends. One good broker can make you millions. Yeah, that's what I alluded to earlier. It's not that. Don't view brokers as the enemy. Brokers are not your enemy. Brokers are part of your team, right? Your team is going to be consistent of brokers who are going to buy you deals, and you want to be part of a broker's team, because we're all in this to make money, to feed our families, to do good, and that broker is trying to do the same thing by bringing you a deal, and you are trying to be a qualified buyer so that it closes. Performance is going to be key in this game.
One other thing, Jason and Ken can probably speak to this as well. I mean, having a broker representing you is like somebody who's looking for deals for you. So if you make an offer on a property and it doesn't go through, but you were qualified and everything, for whatever reason, it didn't happen. Now that guy knows that you are qualified, and he will be on the lookout, and he can, if I was a broker representing you and you did a deal with me, but it didn't go through, whatever, maybe the numbers were wrong, maybe maybe somebody else outbid you or whatever, but everything else was fine, and Ken was the listing agent, then after that deal's done, I might call Ken up and just say, hey, Jason's really looking for something. What else do you have? And Ken might have an off-market deal that he's about to list, but he already knows that you're a buyer, and he knows what the seller is willing to accept. And we might make a deal doing it that way. And that's how a broker your own broker, somebody like Ken on your side, can make you millions of dollars, because he knows what's going on in the market. He knows all the other players. The other brokers aren't his enemies. They're his friends, because they make him money as well. So just like Ken can speak to that a little bit, but I don't want to be bashing brokers. I'm just saying that there's more than one way to, work with brokers. So
I like it. Ken, any comments on that? Or you want to talk about how, I guess, what it is that you do when you are working with a buyer?
Well, I mean, he's right. I mean, a good broker is going to make you millions. They're also going to limit your liability as well. Which is one of the biggest things we got to be careful of, is when you're buying commercial properties, you got to watch your liability. You got to know what you're getting into. And when you're working with a broker, they're going to, through their experience, they're going to point things out. Hey, you really need to look at these things. These could be issues. This could be taken care of, that kind of thing. And a broker is going to know that information. So
the other thing that's really valuable about a guy like Ken is that, let's say that I was buying a property and you were my client. Ken was my agent, and we were looking at a property and there was something wrong with the roof. Ken may have a relationship with a roofer who can go over there and give me a quick estimate on what it's going to take, whether that roof really is failing or it's got another 5 or 7 years on it, or it can be patched, or they can save you a lot of money with their contract relationships as well. And the other thing that Ken isn't telling you, but I'm sure that he's done this, is that sometimes he knows that the sellers are not people that you want to deal with, that they're not the greatest, not the seller's broker, but that seller, he's had other experiences with them and he's got his antenna up, at least he'll tell you what to look out for dealing with that seller, because they, usually sellers have more than one property, and sometimes they have really good reputations, and sometimes you need more information. I'll just put it that way.
Well, and that's only the case that's going to happen is when I'm not representing the seller. That's when I'm only representing you as the buyer.
Right.
If I'm representing the seller, I'm not telling you any of that stuff.
Right. But you might also know, representing me, that seller has, just because you're in the market all the time, that seller has some financial stresses he's dealing with.
Right. If I'm only representing you, correct.
Because you're in that market and you've heard about that.
Yep.
So those things help you when you're constructing an offer. And Ken could also help me in my offer by talking to the listing agent and kind of doing a trial balloon to see if they're going to accept these, especially if you're doing some creative terms or whatever, that whether they're going to accept that before you waste your time writing an offer and your legal fees. So they can save you tons of money. They can make you millions of dollars. So brokers are great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you both for sharing that. I mean, I agree 100%, right? Brokers are your best friend when it comes to this. And a lot of times there are people in the, they try to go the off market or the through wholesalers. And I've looked, I just haven't found anybody who's been really effective at doing it. I haven't found anybody really effective at doing wholesale, right? Brokers are in the market every day, making phone calls to owners and following up with owners much better than any wholesaler could off the street who just buys a list from somewhere. It's literally what their job is. And so trying to work around that, it can be done, right? I think it does happen, but for the most part, right, brokers are your best friends when it comes to commercial real estate. They're going to know more about the properties. They're going to have more relationships and be able to help you out. And I think that's what Jim and Ken were basically speaking about, right? It's just how helpful brokers are in this. So hopefully today, right, from this meeting, you've been able to find some useful tips that you can use. You understand the importance of brokers and where to find them at. We talked about LoopNet and Crexi, and then building those relationships, right? So as you are looking to find deals in markets, meet with those brokers, exchange emails with those brokers, have face-to-face connections, even go out and tour properties, whether you're in that market or not, because there have been times I've had this experience myself where you go to a broker, you're looking at a property, doesn't necessarily work for you, but they're like, hey, I do got something that we're going to be listing up next month. I can't show you the inside, but you can go through and tour it, and here's the address. And now you've just got 2-week advantage on everybody else when it comes to that property, and you can do a lot of due diligence and have your offer in first for that deal. So definitely leverage those relationships. Any other questions come in? Any comments about this? Jim, what you got?
Well, I would just say one other thing is that don't just treat the broker strictly as a business relationship. I mean, get to know them as a person. Just call them once in a while. Just say, hey, Ken, how you doing today? Understand you were having, some issues with some health problems, or maybe Ken closes the deal, you didn't get it. Call them up and say, hey, I just saw you close that deal. That's really awesome. And then that gives you an opportunity. What else do you have that's available? And then the last thing I would say is kind of a little secret, but I'm going to give it out to you. I like putting in backup offers. Usually for it doesn't cost any money because you don't have to come up with an earnest money deposit till you go to first position. But I've gotten 4 or 5 deals in the last couple of years where one of them I was the 4th backup offer, and I ended up getting the property. Now, these are smaller properties, but they were really, they were a waterfront. They were just amazing deals. But don't be afraid to put in a backup offer. And then if you're putting in an offer that's lower than what Ken wants you to put it in, then just say, hey, look, Ken, I want you to call the other guy and tell him that we're not trying to insult him, but we want to put this offer in. And he's free to counter, but we can't afford what they're asking. But we want them to know that we're in the game and we can make an offer, and this is what it's going to be. And you'd be surprised because look what's happened in the last 6 months. You could have an offer in February, and the thing got dragged out for 4 or 5 months, and then it didn't close. We're in a whole different interest rate environment. So now your offer is looking really good. And Ken goes back to the listing agent and says, hey, Jim still wants that property. What do you think? And the guy says, yeah, all the other ones blew out. Let's go. And you got a deal.
Yeah, no, that's solid. It's especially any deal that you're really attracted to. I think it's worth that. I don't do it nearly as much as I should, but that's a good reminder, Jim. It's just, hey, go into that broker and say, are you accepting backups right now? Or you called, or you called the broker and, hey, I was interested in this. No, it's under contract. Can I submit a backup? Right? Will you accept it? I think that'd be a good tool for you to use, right? Just say, get in that process of submitting backups if the broker says yeah, right? And they know, right, as we mentioned here, they know what's going on in that transaction. They may not be able to disclose it to you, but they know if things are getting a little shaky, or if the seller and the buyer are bickering over a contract, or due diligence things came up, right? They know that. So having that conversation with them to just say, do you want a backup, oftentimes can help, as Jim mentioned, lead you to future deals.
I would like to ask Ken what percentage of deals he had the first offer never went through, but the second or third did. I bet it's higher than you think. I'd like to have Ken speak to that.
Well, one, as a listing agent on commercial property, or actually any property, you always want a backup. You always, in my opinion, you always want a backup, because that puts me in a better leverage position representing the seller. You're always in a better leverage position, because you can always say, I got a backup offer. If you don't want to do this, then that's fine. I'll go to the next person. And that always freaks other buyer agents out and other buyers. To be honest with you, Jim, my numbers are very low when it comes to losing the first buyer, because I just vet them. Even as a listing agent, when I get an offer in, we're vetting the hell out of that buyer first before we even get close. I will not accept the contract. We only do we do letters of intents first. We review everything. We get a shell of what they're wanting to do, and then we get an idea, and then we find out where their finances are and everything else, and where their experience is. So to be honest with you, a lot of my stuff, very little numbers on my side will fall through.
Nice.
Okay. We just sold a building in DC, and because of the apartment building in DC, and we had 4 or 5 offers ourselves. And because of the pandemic and everything else going on like that, the sellers they just fell out. And we actually ended up with the best buyer, even though they were like, the third or fourth option. They ended up being the best qualified buyer. We took a little bit of a haircut, and the agent took a little bit of a haircut on the fee, but it all worked out. And so I've been on both sides of, being the backup guy. So it may not happen that often, but what if it happened on one deal and it made you a few $1 million? Is that worth writing a backup offer? Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All
right. Well, thanks to everyone who showed up today. I think this was a good conversation. Definitely enjoyed it. Thank you, Ken, for being on. If you have some contact information that you'd like to share, on the chat, if anybody's in Washington State and maybe they're looking for a broker, right? If you want to include that, I think that will be helpful. To everyone else, I really appreciate you taking time out of your Tuesday. We'll be back here next Tuesday with another subject. Yep, Ken, thank you for that. I see your information and the phone number in there. Right. So we'll be back here next Tuesday to talk about something. I'm not really sure what it is yet. I gotta go check the calendar, but we'll definitely keep this going. Loving the conversations that we have. Appreciate you taking time out. Make it a great day. on purpose because you deserve it. And I will see you all next week.